and welcome to the Neurodivergent Musician Podcast. I'm your host, Jon Hart, along with Luna, my guitar, and today's episode is all about raising awareness of neurodivergent musicians. Each episode is broken up into a traffic light format where I'll share insights in the red section, improvised stories in the amber, and recommendations you might find handy in the green. As someone who is neurodivergent, I know firsthand how important it is to have a community that understands and supports us. In this episode, we'll explore what it means to be a neurodivergent musician, the challenges we face, and how we can work together to create a more inclusive and supportive music industry. Okay, so welcome back. We're into the red section, which is the insights. So what is neurodivergence? Before we dive into the specifics of being a neurodivergent musician, let's first define what neurodivergence means. Neurodivergence refers to a range of neurological differences that affect the way people think, learn, and process information. Some examples of neurodivergent conditions include autism, ADHD, dyslexia, Tourette syndrome, bipolar, among others. Neurodivergent musicians are those who identify as having a neurodivergent condition and who are involved in making music in some capacity. This includes everything from amateur musicians who play for fun to professional musicians who make a living from their music. Being a neurodivergent musician comes with its own unique set of challenges. For example, some neurodivergent individuals may struggle with sensory overload, making it difficult to perform in loud or crowded environments. Others may have difficulty with social interactions, making it hard to network or collaborate with other musicians. Additionally, some neurodivergent individuals may struggle with executive function, making it challenging to manage the business side of their music career. And we all know what that feels like when we're trying to run our business alongside our music. All we really want to do is crack on with the music and allow someone else to do it. But more often than not, we have to be musician entrepreneurs at the same time. For example, music venues and festivals can create more accessible environments by offering sensory-friendly spaces, providing quiet areas, and offering accommodations for those with mobility issues. Music teachers and educators can also learn more about neurodivergent conditions and adapt their teaching methods to better support neurodivergent students. I do this, I'm an analogy teacher. I try and teach everything that is relative to the student. So it might not just be about guitar. So for instance, on the guitar with my left hand, I always talk about a sock puppet. On my right hand, to try and get a finger picking shape, I try and use a flip phone shape. And I try and use as many analogies as possible to try and hit the message home. Additionally, musicians can create online communities and support groups where neurodivergent musicians can connect and share their experiences. So that is it for the red section with my insights. I'm now going to go into the amber section with more personalized insights and stories. See you then. Okay, and welcome back. So we are now in the amber section, and I'm just going to go through an improvised story or just talk about my insights. And mainly it comes, especially with awareness, into when I'm on the road or when I'm in the studio. Now, I have eventually over time been able to set up my studio stuff at home as I can just work here. If you're on YouTube, you'll be able to see the video, but I'm here in my home studio where I can actually just be in my slippers and then I can, record it over time. It's relatively quiet. There's not a lot going on. And if I need to take a break and go and get a coffee, everything is quiet. The sensory part is really, really important. And I feel that sometimes gets lost in a lot of music studios, a lot of music venues, festivals, etc., etc. When I'm on the road and I'm in a car, I prefer the car to going obviously on the train and things because, again, sensory issues. And there's nothing worse than trying to go to a gig I mean, obviously driving can be quite stressful. I did a tour. I did 3 UK tours actually, which I planned and booked myself, and which was incredibly stressful. And I drove around like 1,500 miles in sort of 10 days, and that can fatigue you. Obviously, you know, driving awareness that can make it even worse. So by the time you get to the venue, you're pretty exhausted already. But when you do get to the venue, you're looking for that quiet space. And the green room, as a lot of you professional musicians out there, if you're listening, you will know what the green room feels like. Pre-show, it's kind of stress, anxiety, especially if you're neurodivergent and you're trying to practice, but you're a bit out of place. You can't put headphones on because you don't want to be antisocial. You've got to connect with the sound guy. You've got to connect with the venue manager. You've got to connect with the other acts that are there. And you've then got to try and, you know, maybe find some food. You've got to try and do all of these things all at once. And it can be, you know, incredibly stressful when something so authentic and with regards to performing your music on stage should come naturally. And I actually find that I can only get into that authentic process where I can be myself and I'm not in my head, you know, and it sounds quite cheesy, but I'm in my heart in regards to my playing, and I'm in that emotional phase when I am on tour and I've played, you know, a number of shows, and it often takes like 2 or 3 shows for me to get into my rhythm. And, you know, I've been there so many times where I've been driving and there's been like a flat tire, or, you know, something's gone wrong with the car, or, you know, you're trying to find a parking space and you're spending like 10, 15 minutes and you're starting to get riled up. And as much as you can put the radio on, as much as you can put a podcast on and things as well, you can never control those situations. I used to go out gigging and I used to have my wife alongside me in the car. But, you know, having children and other things means now that I'm in the car on my own. And sometimes, you know, to other people that can, you get time to yourself. You're driving things. But if your neurodivergent brain, I call it, you know, I love the guys from the ADHD Adults podcast. They call it bee brain. And I'm sort of the same. I kind of call it like it's the hive. And the hive is like where the bees and wasps are just literally flying around, hitting each other, almost, you know, crashing. And there's so much noise going on, if you can imagine, you know, wasps and bees. That is my analogy. There's other analogies of like 32 channels on at the same time. But if you imagine, you know, the hive brain has like 30 bees or 30 wasps or whatever it is going on at the same time. It's incredibly noisy, incredibly busy. And, you know, it's almost like being in the middle of traffic where you've got like horns going off, you know, you just... It's just crazy. And anyway, that is what's going on in the car. That is what's going on in the green room. And it's only until I've played my first song and I've got all the anxiety out of the way, I've got the stress out of the way, where, you know, I'm content and I'm on stage. And I think for a lot of musicians, it's when you're in mid-performance, you know, for an hour, that is what we live for. It's a labor of love at the end of the day, because you don't earn a lot, especially as an independent music artist, or if you haven't broken it, like the very, very tiny percent that have hit, you know, maybe mainstream, or they're touring, or they've hit that point where their online presence, or they've got the wind behind their sails because they've had a bit of luck in regards to their music journey. And now, obviously, that never negates the blood, sweat and tears and the grind that they've gone through. But there's a lot of us other musicians who have gone through the blood, sweat and tears and grind, exactly the same level, but we've just never been able to get the momentum behind our sails. So what we also do in regards to like shows and things as well, we spend a lot of our time selling tickets and trying to promote our shows and things. We can't just put out one post and then it's sold out the next day, or we outsource it to someone else. So with a neurodivergent brain in sort of like the music industry, it's almost like a jack of all trades. I don't know any independent musician who only has one job. I know a lot, and I've connected with many wonderful musicians, and we're teaching, we're performing, we're doing session work. We are, maybe we're working with venues, maybe we're working in music marketing, maybe whatever it is. There are so many different avenues, production and lots of others, that, we have to have our fingers in so many different pies just to be able to make up a full-time salary. Now, a lot of people will say, well, music is art, and music, to a lot of people is a hobby. But for those who have converted it from a hobby, so for instance, when we were younger, to a career, the grind is real. And if you don't have that sort of approach where you can focus on one journey, then it becomes incredibly difficult. And having that neurodivergent brain, so for instance, I am diagnosed with dyslexia, and I'm going through the process of ADHD and ASD after last few years of hell, which I will go into another episode about. But I've now realized I've got all these things in my brain, and my brain's wired differently. It's made me see things so like in such an amazing and scary way. It just to think that I had 38 years of just banging my head against the wall, or just muddling through the day every day, or taking on too many projects, too many ideas. It's like this podcast was always an idea. I loved the idea of doing a podcast, but I thought, should I teach guitar, or should I talk about the music industry and stuff as well? And I was like, I'm not going to be able to keep that up consistently, because the dopamine in my brain as being a neurodivergent is just going to tail off. So this awareness that I'm trying to spread throughout this podcast is going to be throughout. So there's going to be lots of different subjects that I cover, and I can't wait to have some guests on. And so that's kind of very, very, again, I'm a convoluted, impulsive storyteller, and I'm probably going to listen back to this recording and go, what the hell was I talking about? But if you can dissect what I've spoken about, if there's any insights that you've been able to take away, and, as a neurodivergent, I feel like we have, a different dialect. We have the ways that we can connect with people, the ways that we can talk, the ways that we can creatively think. I don't want to call it a superpower. There's a lot of people who go out, especially ADHD and things, but they say, oh yeah, like hyperfocus is a superpower, but it can actually be kryptonite at the same time, depending on when that hyperfocus kicks in. But I really do believe that once the awareness is there, now I've been unaware pretty much my whole life, apart from when I was diagnosed with dyslexia at university, and that should have rung some bells then. But I was at uni, I was free, I was pretty much an alcoholic, just drinking all the time, eating all the time, just not caring about myself whatsoever. And also, I think when there's internal chaos going on, what we tend to do is try to fill that void with external things. We try and, right, I've got an idea now, I've got a plan, I've got this, I need to build it, because that external fix is going to fix the internal void. And it's not the case. It's like people like, I want to make £1 million, or I want to get a record label, or I want to perform at Glastonbury and things. Is that actually what you want, or are you just trying to fill an internal void? And since I went through a mental health crisis, again, I will go through it in much deeper information in another episode, I have gone internal, and my music's gone internal as well. So the new album that I'm working on, which is called Neurodivergent, goes through that journey. A lot of those songs were born out of the crisis, and one of the songs I wrote is called Rivers of Gold, and it's about the internal rivers of gold. And I don't want that rivers of gold to be greed anymore. I now want it to be internal light. And one of the lyrics is, if I find my internal light, it will give me eternal life. And I think, that was born out of crisis. I had no awareness of writing that. It was just one of those days. But I look back, I look on that, and that's almost could be a tattoo. That's, along with the quote, for every breakdown, there is a breakthrough. And I think with regards to this whole podcast and sharing awareness and sharing stories and sharing insights, I sort of find that I can't talk like this to other people without them seeing that I've taken the mask off. So I've been carrying around a mask for years and years and years, trying to slot into a neurotypical world, trying to be, as the guys from the ADHD Adults podcast say, square peg into a round hole. I felt misunderstood. I felt different my whole life. Something was not right. I was not able to connect into groups, to connect with people. And I didn't know what was going on. But the power of knowing, when you start reading books and start listening to the podcasts and whatever it is, maybe this is the first podcast that you listen to and you might, man, this guy just jabbers. He just jabbers on and on and on and on. And that's ADHD, by the way. It's the impulsiveness, the convoluted way. A lot of people, when they ask me how you're doing, they want like a film trailer response, and that's kind of like the highlights, the bullet points. But I want to give you the full film. I want to give you all the side stories, all the side characters, all the different colors, all the different textures. But this will be like when I'm picking up my kids from school and I'm like, crap, John, no, you've gone into a rabbit hole here. Bring it back, rein it back, rein it back. And that is me then putting the mask back on. So I'm hoping with this podcast, it's me taking the mask off. I can talk freely. I can, jam and improvise on Luna. And Luna is my wonderful Cole Clark guitar. And the reason why she's called Luna is because she shines like the moon. It's also my daughter's favorite Harry Potter character. But anyway, I thought about just talking, and then I thought, actually, no, put a guitar in your hands. My guitar has been my comfort blanket my whole life. It's the only thing I can go to and ask, how am I feeling today? What is it? And then it will respond. And the reason for that is because I've got past the logistical phase of learning, and that's technique, theory, and all that. And I can just go there with freedom. And if you're a professional musician, maybe you've got to that point. As a singer or, whatever instrument that you play, try and see that we're all learning. We're learning every single day. But I just try and use what I've got and just come up with something. And most of the time, I'm not actually coming up with a song, or I'm not composing, I'm not arranging. I'm simply just going to it with an open tuning. I'll put my G7th capo on, and then I'll just be like, right, I'm in the free flow of everything that I'm playing. And then I pop on, now you can only see this on YouTube, a tone wood amp, which I get all the effects and stuff. And then you can just immerse yourself in that experience. And again, I'm going off track, but I think it's all connected somehow. So that's kind of like loosely my improvised story and insights into awareness. My goal for this podcast going forward is to build a neurodivergent musician community. It's not just for musicians, it can be for creatives. The reason why I've called it Neurodivergent Musician is because I am neurodivergent and I know a lot about being a musician, and I wanted to talk about both things throughout this podcast. So that is it for the amber section. I hope you got something out of it. If this has bored you to tears, or you feel like this is a car crash, then please do pop it on when you're just about to go to sleep, and hopefully it will send you to sleep. So anyway, the next section I'll go through, which is the green section, will go into a recommendation. See you then. Hey, and welcome back to the Neurodivergent Musician podcast. In this section, I'm going to go through the green zone, which is a recommendation. So one of the resources that I have been using every day is the Adults ADHD podcast. Now, I don't want to be one of those podcasts I'm going, just listen to me and no one else. I would completely recommend you go and listen to this podcast if you are delving into the world of ADHD. Now, when I started listening to it, episode 1 is about the diagnosis, and it was just, what I love about these guys and Mrs. ADHD, which is Sam. So we've got James, Alex, and Sam. Sam is Mrs. ADHD, is their authenticity, and the amount of info that they introduce, the banter, just the improvisation. And again, it's one of those that I tune in, and they're like under 30-minute episodes. And it's such a delight to tune in every single day. And I want to recommend that podcast. I mean, they're blowing up, they're touring around the country, they're doing amazing things. Again, spreading awareness about ADHD, but they also talk about communities. So that will be, ADHD with autism, ADHD with other things. You can get to know, a lot deeper insights. They're both ADHD coaches, so they know a ton about it, and they're educating me all the time. So if you haven't checked it out, go and check out the ADHD Adults podcast. I think you can get it on all the podcast platforms. They're also on YouTube, where they go and live stream it onto there. They're also on socials as well. I've reached out to James, Alex, and Sam, and they've all responded. And it's for the first time in my life when you kind of connect with other neurodivergent people that you're like, wow, this is my tribe. They are speaking my code, or whatever it is, speaking my language. They are transparent. They're just themselves, and there's no judgment. There's no nothing. I mean, we all suffer with like admin and paralysis and social media paralysis. I do as well, and it's just like a heap of messages and stuff. So, and I think with how popular their podcast has got, they're probably getting inundated with messages and emails and everything at the time. But, they have this wonderful sort of format with their podcast, where again, they break it up into 3 sections. But there's there's very serious podcasts elsewhere. And I'm trying to learn from that at the same time. I don't want this to be, a completely serious podcast. I want to share some things and stuff as well. I can't really banter with myself. I could do like the Gollum Smeagol approach of, that's my precious. But I won't do that. I will leave my Gollum impressions for another time. But, and that would be weird if I'm talking from Gollum and Smeagol. But that's probably why I'm going to get guests on, and we're going to have a little bit of chat and banter and stuff as well. But yeah, go and check out their podcast if you want to learn more about ADHD. It's really fascinating. I laugh every single episode. They don't hold back on swearing or whatever language they use and stuff as well. And it's just really heartfelt, and it's what we need in the world, when we're sort of surrounded by so many serious things that are going on all the time. Having a neurodivergent brain is, it is serious, and it has a lot of negative things about it, and a lot of really, really dark days. But I feel if you can sort of join a community of similar-minded people, same with like musicians, when we connect as musicians, we've got a lot of crap going on all the time that a lot of people don't see. And we get our massive dopamine hit of when we turn up on a show or when we're in the studio, but around it, it's constant chaos. And then you top that with having a neurodivergent brain, which is basically hive brain 24/7, and you can barely focus, you can barely do your things, and you need your musical instrument to be able to, transport you to another world, or to help you focus, or whatever it is. We know we can't live in our musical world all the time. We've got to do the business side, and we've got to connect with others, and we've got to live life as well. But having a podcast like the ADHD Adults is something that everybody needs in the world. Whether you have ADHD or not, I would just tune in, and it's just an amazing way to educate yourselves. And I think spreading awareness, that is one of the best resources I've found, along with some books and stuff, which I'll discuss in other episodes. But so that is the first episode of the Neurodivergent Musician podcast. If you want to find out more info about who the hell I am, you can go to jonhartmusic.com. That's JONHART music.com. You can contact me on socials or email me on the contact page. Let me know what you think of the episode, and if you've got any suggestions going forward, or you think, oh, there's an amazing guest that could come on to yours and stuff as well. Just let me know. Or if you want to hear more of Luna, I can play some stuff. I can come up with some lyrics. I can come up with some music. I want this podcast to be experimental. So anyway, thank you so much for tuning in, and keep creating music, and I'll see you in the next episode. Cheers. Take care.